Growing from seed can be one of the easiest and cheapest ways to get a garden started. Today, I am going to show you how simple it is to get some seeds started. Let's begin. You're going to need a container of some sort. I like these 6-cell trays. They're nicely designed, reusable. I've used them for a long time. Use what you have. Upcycle something or look for some pots that are reusable. You also are going to want something to cover that pot with. For me, one of the things I love about these trays is that they also have domes that go over the top, and that's really handy. So this will go over the top and it helps keep it moist and keep things going in there. You don't have to have a fancy dome. You can use a simple Ziploc bag. That will work, or any kind of plastic bag. Bread bags are actually really great. There are lots of different ways to cover your seeds, and that's really just to get the germination going. It helps keep the soil moist because little seeds do not like to dry out. You're going to need the basic ingredients for a mix, or you can buy one ready-made. And in a few minutes, I'll walk you through how to make a seed starting mix. Additionally, you're going to need a way to label your seeds. These are seed labels. You might be tempted to think, oh, I'll remember. Trust me, you will not remember. So you need some way to label what you have planted. The best advice I can give you is to make sure that it's labeled in the container where the seeds actually are, as opposed to on the lid, because lids can get mixed up, but this won't get mixed up. And I actually use indelible marker and write directly on these and then just take it off with nail polish remover. Let's talk about making your seed starting mix. There are just kind of two pieces to that seed starting mix that are really important. You need something fluffy that's going to give it volume and retain water. And then you need something grainy that is going to help create air pockets for those little teeny tiny roots to start getting established in. There are lots of recipes out there for making a seed starting mix. So having said that, here's my basic recipe. I use coco coir, which is light and fluffy and airy. I use perlite. You can also use vermiculite, use whatever you happen to have. I happen to have perlite today, so that's what I'm going to use. I always put in a little bit of mycorrhizae powder. This isn't absolutely essential, but it helps to get those roots started and helps support root growth. So that's why I put that in. And then I always mix in just a little bit of worm castings. I don't have any vermiculite today, so I'm going to use perlite. Perlite looks like styrofoam, but it's not. It's actually a volcanic glass. And when it is heated up and expanded, it takes on this property that makes it fantastic in potting mixes. It is very long lasting. It also holds water and it creates those little air pockets. Coco coir is my choice for that light and fluffy ingredient that a good seed starting mix needs. It is a byproduct of the coconut industry. Nothing is perfect in terms of carbon footprint and that kind of thing, but I choose coco coir because it is renewable, where some people would choose peat moss, which is not actually a renewable resource. So I tend to choose cocoa because I really like how it works, and this mixed recipe never fails me. I use worm castings. And worm castings are basically, it's just worm poop. Worm poop has a little bit of nutrition, but nutrition isn't all that important for seeds. Seeds, when they are germinating and just starting to grow, they get everything that they need from the seed itself. So it's not the nutrition that is all that important. It is starting to condition the soil and getting things ready for that next stage. That's why I put a little bit of worm castings in there too. So let's make up a batch. So I already have 1 scoop of coco coir in here. And the basic recipe that I use is 2 parts, whatever your part is. In my case, I'm going to use the scoop as a part. So 2 parts of coco coir, and then 2 parts of perlite or vermiculite, and then 1 part worm castings. And then this is unscientific as I'm measuring it, but 1/5 of a part of mycorrhizal powder. Or in this case, this kind comes with a measuring scoop in it. So I'm just going to go with a couple of scoops of this powder. So now you want to mix this really, really well. You don't want any big lumps. You don't want anything. You want it to be pretty fine. And then once it's nicely mixed, I'm going to hydrate it a little bit because all of those ingredients are pretty dry. And I don't want this to be the consistency of mud. I just don't want it to be super, super dry. Now, I'm mixing this together in a gardening trug, and before I started this process, I cleaned this gardening trug really well and disinfected it. Now, I don't worry about that all the time in the garden, but when you are starting brand new seedlings, you don't want any possibility of introducing bacteria or viruses or anything like that that comes from sick plants. And, you know, the last time I did a lot of gardening was in the fall, and I did have some dahlias, for example, that I had to throw out because they have some kind of a disease. And I don't want that to be introduced here to my new seedlings. All right, that is a nice loose mixture. You can see, but I can also feel the moisture in the mix. It's going to hold together nicely. So now I take a seed tray and I'm just going to fill it, and then I'm going to tap it down. So I'm not packing the seed tray, but I don't want it to be half air. I want it to be nice and full of soil. So I found that dropping it a little is kind of perfect. So what I like to do when I'm starting seeds is to fill a bunch of seed trays and then go through and put the seeds in. So let's do that. So the nice thing about measuring the ingredients in parts is that your part can be as big or as little as you need it to be. You could make up a whole bin of seed starting material and leave it and use it as you need it to. And your part might be bags full of materials. Or you can make it in very small batches like this, which is just enough for a couple of trays. Now you can see I have 10 trays all ready to go. And now it's time to sow the seeds. So this is where your seed packet is really important, because your seed packet is going to tell you how deep your little seeds should go. And some seeds want to be buried very deeply, and other seeds literally just sit on the top of the soil. So paying attention to the instructions on your seed packet is really important at this point. So I am going to start this romaine lettuce. This is Paris Island cause, and I'm going to get it started in some seed trays. So it says you should put 3 seeds together, and you either put it on the surface or 1/8 of an inch deep. So what I will do is surface sow these and then put just a dusting of the soil over top. So here's the seed. You can see how tiny it is. Very, very tiny. So I'm going to put 3 seeds on each little cell. Okay, so those 3 trays are Parasilene cause, and I'm going to mark that on each of these trays. If I had vermiculite, now I would sprinkle a light layer of vermiculite over top of these seeds. I like vermiculite for doing that because I feel like its absorbency really keeps those seeds moist. However, I'm out of it, so we're going to use seed sowing mix, and that will be just fine too. So just a little bit. If those seeds are buried too deeply, they won't germinate. So it's just a light dusting, and all that's doing is helping to keep the moisture in and keep those seeds moist. But remember, it said you could surface sow these seeds, so they clearly. All right, and then we're gonna tamp this down. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just making sure I have good contact between the seed and the soil. So next I'm gonna sow some onions, and I'm gonna show you something that is fantastic. It's a great secret for onions. Onions are a special thing because their roots do not get tangled with each other. So because I'm going to be planting these out, I'm not going to grow onions in these little trays the entire time. I'm going to do something that's called oversowing. So it is my favorite secret with onions. So I'm going to take the seeds, and instead of putting 1 or 2 seeds in each cell, I'm going to put all of these seeds across these seed trays, which means I'm going to end up with 20 or 30 onions. And again, just a sprinkling over the top. Oversowing works for onions because their roots don't get tangled together. So when these are about 6 inches tall or so, it'll be about time for me to plant them out into the garden. And at that point, I'll separate them all out and put them into their own individual holes. But I'll have gotten 50 or 60 little onion plants in this very small space. Now, all these trays are filled, planted up, ready to go. So let's cover them and water them. Okay, so like I said, I love the little humidity domes that go over each of these. So I'm just gonna tuck them in. Okay, so now I will fill this tray with water. I find that bottom watering for seedlings is so much more effective than top watering. And the reason for that is because with bottom watering, it doesn't wash the seeds away. So I just fill this tray with water. What happens is that the holes in the bottom of the tray allow the soil to wick the water up into the tray of soil. So we get good, even distribution of water, and the soil doesn't get overly saturated. So I really like bottom watering. It works very, very well. I use it for my houseplants. I use it for almost anything I can. I even sometimes fill trugs of water out here in the greenhouse and just dunk my plants into the trugs of water. So you can see the water level keeps going down, and that's because the water is being sucked up into the soil, the growing mixture. So with these trays, I will only water them again if the soil gets dry. And I'll look at that every day. And here in Colorado, that happens every 2 or 3 days. So I'll keep them moist, and then they'll get more water once the seeds have started to germinate. So place your tray of seedlings in a south-facing window or under some grow lights or if you have a greenhouse in your greenhouse. And in just a few weeks, you should have germinating seeds, which is always so fun. If you have questions, please drop them below and I'm happy to answer. And I hope you'll like and subscribe too. Happy gardening.